Welcome to the 2020 Philadelphia Film Festival. My name is Michael Lerman. I'm the artistic director here, and I'm really lucky to have today writer-director Lawrence Michael Levine, star Aubrey Plaza, and costume designer Allie Pearce from Black Bear. How you guys doing? How you holding up in the pandemic?
Okay.
I'm doing great,
Yeah.
Michael.
Larry, can we start? I just want to talk a little bit about where the idea for the project came from and kind of the creation, since the structure is so unique and the idea in many ways is very unique.
Yeah, I don't. That's a question I get asked, and I haven't figured out a good way to answer it. It started from a mood, really. That's not an answer. It started from a dark mood. I cleared my schedule. I was doing a bunch of work for money. And then when I had enough saved up, I was like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I want, and I didn't have any idea at all. I just kept going to my office, waiting for something to happen. I was in a dark mood. There were some hard things going on in my life and in society, and started to think about characters, and that's what came out. I knew that I wanted to do something that was a little more unconventional, narratively speaking. I didn't want to do just like a 3-act, 8-sequence kind of structure that I've been working with on all my paid work. And wanted to do something more adventurous and kind of draw from more art house and European influences than, just kind of normal movies. And other than that, it was just a mood.
Can we talk a little bit about how Aubrey got involved? Because I know you're also a producer on it. And were you guys kind of planning it early stages together, or was,
I don't know how she would describe it. I wouldn't say we planned it. I would say that we were working together on this TV show called Easy, and we just were having a bunch of conversations, kind of hit it off, and I thought that she would be awesome to work with because, I don't know, she was just so great and hardworking. I could tell she was interested in doing something challenging and different. And she's so brilliant. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll write something for her. So it was that coupled with the mood I was in. But she was in mind. I was writing it for her.
Yeah. Aubrey, did you kind of agree before seeing anything? What were the conversations like on your own?
No, yeah, like Larry said, we worked together as actors first, and so it was a fun way to get to know Larry as a scene partner, because it was very obvious that we kind of thought about things in the same way, just in terms of performance and process and stuff. And so, yeah, so the first time I heard about it, Larry just gave me the script, and I didn't know he was writing it or anything. It was kind of this gift that he gave me, and then we kind of just kept, went from there.
This film kind of lives and dies on the cast in a very, very distinct way, because I think that the three of you are so fine-tuned in your performances and the way you work off each other. I was curious what the rehearsal process was like, and what and how much of it was, it's very verbose. Is there any improv there? Is there any kind of looseness, or is it tightly to the script?
Aubrey, do you want to take it, or should I?
I'll just say I don't think there was a ton of improv. I mean, the script was written almost like a play, so, which I think is what was so appealing about it to me and to Chris and Sarah. It was really beautifully written, and yeah, we had a rehearsal process, but it was more like, I guess, us kind of sitting on the weekends and before we were shooting, just going through the script and reading it together and having all the discussions and things like that. But I don't know, what else do you want to add about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was the shoot was really short. I think we only had about 4 days prior to we kind of just had a weekend prior to when the shoot started to do anything. So with that little time, the best use of time, we all thought, was just to sit with the script and talk through anything that didn't make sense to the actors, and any lines they didn't like, and anything that they didn't feel felt natural. So we did go through the script and make alterations together. And I think that leads to really naturalistic style performance. If the actors aren't saying anything that doesn't feel like it would naturally come out of their mouths, it helps to make things feel more improvised. That being said, I don't really know the answer to how much is improvised or not, because although I take a lot of care to write the script when I'm actually working on it, once I get to set, I'm thinking like a director and forget even what the script says. I'm just watching the scenes to make sure that they are exciting and make sense. So if the actors don't say a line exactly like I wrote it, I'm not looking for that. You know, I'm not looking for, did they say a line incorrectly? I'm looking to see if the scene's alive. So, you know, I think probably most of, you know, I'd say a lot of it's written, but there's just a fine line between what's improv and what's not anyway.
Is it, you mentioned it was a short shoot, and obviously it's a contained location. Was it close, you know, were you all kind of living there together in terms of the crew too? And we have Allie here too, so I was curious about how tight knit the crew was versus another shoot where it would be kind of bigger and people would go home, or they'd go, you know, kind of spread out more.
That's a good question for Allie. I think Aubrey and the actors were separate. They were staying in a hotel that was like 45 minutes away. Mm-hmm. So I think, well, Aubrey could speak to that. They probably bonded. And then me and Rob, the DP, were in the house where we shot in, and we did that so we could wake up every day and plan our shots. Right. So we were kind of really bonded. We were very close because it was a difficult shoot, and that was just a really important relationship. So, and then Allie, I don't know.
Yeah, we stayed in another little cabin on the lake around the bend. Basically, you could canoe to our little spot. Me, the production designer, and like some more crew members, and there were like another house with the ADs, so we were all very close. And you know, the film's so beautiful, and we were kind of like living there, like in that world. You know, we were so close to our location. So yeah, and most of us didn't leave because we were very far in the Adirondacks, so we were there the whole time, you know, living the lake life.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, there was no contact with the outside world really, so it was yeah, we were definitely sequestered.
It was funny to me because it struck me yesterday watching it. It was like this movie could be, it's like the ideal movie to shoot right now, you know, when COVID shoots.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was curious also about kind of the turn. Look, obviously the structure has this massive turn in it, but I was curious for all of you in terms of the way you approach that, both, you know, with the look of the film. You know, Aubrey, did you approach it as two characters? Larry, did you approach it directing differently in some way? Kind of looking at how you shift between one section to another section.
I think it was pretty self-explanatory to the actors. The decision, I think, big decisions. I think the biggest decision was for Sarah. To decide how much she was going to try and imitate what Aubrey did in the first one. And we kind of decided that she wouldn't, but that she would do a third thing. But other than that, there wasn't really even any discussion of that. It seemed pretty self-evident to the actors. So I think it's more of a question for Aubrey about her approach, because I didn't really discuss it with them.
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that question. It's like, I definitely approach the two parts of the movie very differently. For me, I would say they were very different characters, but there's a lot of overlap with them, kind of on an unconscious level. And so the differences might be very subtle to someone else, but for me they were very big, because but there were a lot of things that were kind of like weaving in and out, and the only way I can describe it is like both of the halves felt almost like two different nightmares combining into like one giant nightmare. So it was like, it was very, it was a different way. It was a different way of working for me. I've never worked like that, but it was kind of interesting process wise, because I know Larry had talked about dream imagery and kind of like almost like a Jungian like approach to writing, and there was a similar way of working for me that came in a that I've never had before, where it was kind of operating on another level of it was a more, I don't know, experimental way of working, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Allie, was there things you thought about in terms of the look between one half and the other half, and kind of shifting those two things?
Yeah, I think, when I read the script and talked to Larry, it's always very much like they're two completely separate films. I think we discussed it, and some like even like the camera work is, they're vastly different. And when we were talking about the characters and what the characters might look like, that was a decision Larry and I kind of made together, and we talked it through, like when Aubrey and Sarah kind of switch costumes, they're switching characters, and we kind of discussed whether to do that versus not. And I think that I don't know if audience would recognize that, because costume is kind of supporting the performance, but I think it was the right decision for sure.
I think a lot of people noticed that. Like, I think that there were things like that kind of like seeped into people's, I don't know, minds.
It's the kind of thing where you kind of, to help with it from an audience perspective, I feel like the costumes and just the look itself is a little bit of a roadmap, even subconsciously, to know that something has changed,
Yeah, the question was to give them that roadmap or not. I think in the script it was written that that the costumes were switched, but we did discuss it again before we shot, the option of not doing that.
Right.
Which I think would have been a mistake. So.
And then I can only imagine like trying to prep the costumes to make sure they fit, like make sure it's appropriate for the people and for the actors and also for the roles in that way.
Well, yeah, because something that looks really fantastic on one actor doesn't necessarily work the exact same thing on another actor. So that was like a big part of the conversation when like Aubrey and I first had a fitting. It's like, is this going to work for Sarah, and is something that Sarah's wearing going to work for Aubrey? So we had to kind of have this like mesh of costumes that way.
Right. It's interesting because the movie is so much part of the element of the movie is working close with people in your personal life, and it occurs to me that both Larry and Aubrey have made things with their partners. Can you talk a little bit? Do you think inherently that shifts the working relationship at all? Do you think it affects the working relationship inherently? Do you think it's kind of there or not?
I think it affects in my experience, it's affected our personal relationship while we're working together. Like, it's very hard to be both things at once. I found it's hard to be a husband and direct my wife like in something. It seems like the husband part kind of goes away a little bit and recedes until after the shoot, because the shoot is so stressful and intense. It's like very hard to for everybody, for the actor and the director. And I think, we become more business partners for the 3 weeks or whatever it is. But what we see in the movie is a much dirtier blending, where the boundary isn't set very well. But in my personal life, we wouldn't, things have never degenerated like that because there is a boundary. There's an understanding, like, we're on set, this is a business environment, or an artistic environment, but it's not like sitting around the house and living your day-to-day life. It's just a different, very stressful thing.
Well, that's easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't leaning towards something autobiographical there. I was more just, I was curious about whether you think there is this inherent shift in the way the work is approached, from knowing
You
somebody.
mean when you're in a relationship also?
Yeah, when you're in a relationship also.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes for me, definitely. There's a great intimacy about it, but there's also a high stakes energy that can be disruptive as well.
Right.
Which you see in the movie, you know, exaggerated or pushed. I don't know if that's Aubrey's experience, but that's been mine.
Yeah, I think it's really challenging working with your partner in an artistic endeavor, because your partner is the person that you, at least for us, it's like it's the one person that you want approval from the most, and the one person that can fuck you up the most, and it's
Right.
just, it's so loaded, everything is so loaded that it's, and especially as a director actor dynamic, it's already so there's such a sensitivity there, because I don't know, for me, like anytime I'm working, a director in a lot of cases always becomes this kind of like weird parental figure for me unconsciously, and it's like, I don't know, it's like it just kind of, things go off the rails really easily when you're not being very conscious about how you're dealing with each other. And it's like, for it to be successful, it's like your communication skills have to be like off the charts, or things can really unravel very quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Hard dynamic to navigate.
I agree.
I want to ask you guys one last question, and it was about, one thing that really stands out to me about the movie is the role kind of genre in the film. A lot of people have described it as a horror movie. I've heard that quite a bit, just in terms of certain things in the tone and the direction, but also, in the performances, obviously in the themes. Aubrey just described it as two nightmares smashed into one big nightmare. I was wondering to what extent you guys were thinking about that in terms of prep, in terms of being cognizant of it on set. Larry, I know you've recently, a lot of the films you've written have a genre angle to them. So anyway, for everyone, is there a place of genre in this film for you?
This was something that I thought about a lot, particularly with regard to the music, almost more than anything. How far we wanted to push this into the realm of horror, because it is definitely a nightmare film. That's very accurate. I wanted it very much to feel like a dream that's hard to pin down the meaning of, but that really shakes you. So I think that's what accounts for the flirtation with horror. But I didn't want it. I thought there was a limit to how far to push that without it becoming heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So that was the line I tried to walk, particularly with regard to the music. Yeah.
And then Allie and Aubrey, do you guys have any feeling on that in terms of the way you approached it?
Is surrealism, that's a genre, right?
Yeah.
Film genre. I feel like that probably was kind of, I had that in mind when I was designing the costumes, like, creating this world, and it could be real, it could be not, it's a dream. Is it a nightmare? So thinking about things that way.
Winding down. Sorry.
Just thinking about, doing like little tweaks on costumes, I guess, and to make them stand out and be maybe less everyday, and more within that like dreamlike world.
Yeah. Allie was really good at coming up with little touches that just made things seem a little more unusual, which was something we definitely discussed and talked about. But for the actors, I just wanted them to play it as real as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I definitely, when I read it, when I initially read the script, I felt like, oh, this is like, this feels like almost like a psychological, like, horror film for me, like, just in terms of having that, like, kind of feeling of a nightmare, or, you know, and especially like all of the imagery with the bear, and like there's just something so terrifying about the idea of that. But I wouldn't say like it affected how I approached the material, but there were definitely moments that I felt like I was in a horror movie, like, you know, running down to the lake at night and being scared of things in the bushes and things like that. I've never been in a horror movie, really. I mean, I guess Chucky, but that doesn't really count. But I've never done like a horror movie in the woods where I'm running from like a murder or anything, but
Right.
I think this is probably the closest that I've ever gotten to that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like a
Well, go
What?
ahead.
like a slash film.
Yeah, I've never done that. I don't want to be stabbed. I've been offered so many movies, murder movies, and I'm like, I just don't want to experience being stabbed. There's just something about that that's not. I just don't want that in my brain.
Yeah.
I don't want that in my life.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
Well, we have to wrap up, but I want to thank you guys so much for coming and doing this and for sharing the movie with us.
Thank you.